Right.
Good evening to everyone in the room and at home. This calls for the Special Education Advisory Committee for January 2024, and a Happy New Year to all those joining us at home as well as in the room. The Durham District School Board acknowledges that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships, both historic and modern, with the territories upon which our school board and schools are located. Today, this area is home to many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. We acknowledge that the Durham region forms a part of the traditional and treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, the Mississauga peoples, and the treaty territory of the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation. It is on these ancestral and treaty lands that we teach, learn, and live. The Durham District School Board recognizes Indigenous rights are distinct. In the exercise of those rights, Indigenous staff and students shall not be subjected to action with the aim or effect of depriving these distinct rights. The Durham District School Board is committed to learning and working environments that center human rights and equity and are safe, welcoming, respectful, equitable, accessible, inclusive, and free from discrimination. And I think our agenda this evening certainly reflects those commitments. We will begin with roll call and then move into elections that were postponed from December to this month. I'll be facilitating through to the election of the chair. And then once the chair is elected, the leadership of the meeting would then pass to the chair. But with that, we will begin with roll call, and I'll just acknowledge regrets from Senza Renette Bernal from Autism Ontario, our Durham chapter, as well as Jen McLaughlin from Savannah Afrocentric Circle for Support. And with that, I think maybe I'll go right this time, if that's okay.
Hi there, Michelle Crawford, Lead System Lead, Inclusive Student Services. Tara Cully, Durham Down Syndrome Association. Elizabeth Daniel, Member at Large. Gordon Cameron, Member at Large.
Rowan Jarvis, Learning Disability Association, Durham Region.
Melissa Cook, Durham Elementary School Representation. Tracy Redding, Durham Secondary.
Mike Brown, Ontario Parents of Visually Impaired Children.
Donna Edwards, Trustee Courage, home of the Trustee Reps. Eva Kyriakides, Association for Blind Children.
Connor Jenkinson, System Lead with Inclusive Student Services.
Lisa Rye, Recording Secretary. Andrea McCauley, Superintendent of Inclusive Student Services. We will leave the approval for the agenda until we have, if that's okay, to the chair to run that through with the approval of the minutes. And so we will move into the election of the chair. Voting members of SEAC are able to stand for election themselves or put another voting member forward to stand as chair. If a name is put forward by another member, the nominated member would obviously have an opportunity to either accept or decline that opportunity. If there are two or more members standing for election, each member would have an opportunity to speak to their nomination prior to a vote. And where there are three or more, we'll be able to talk about what would occur in terms of that voting sequence. But with that, I will call three times for the nomination of the chair for SEAC for 2024. So calling once for nominations of chair for 2024. Tara?
I nominate Kyriakides.
Eva, your name's being put forward as SEAC chair. Do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I accept the nomination.
Thank you. So Eva standing for election as chair of SEAC, callings twice for nominations for SEAC chair. Calling third and final time for elections of chair nominations. And seeing none, Eva claimed as chair for 2024 with appreciation.
Thank you everybody for your continued confidence in me as chair. Moving on then for the election of vice chair, and the same scenario, we'll call for nominations three times for vice chair, and we'll move forward from there. Calling for nominations the first time for vice chair.
I'll self-nominate.
Is that Tara?
Sure, okay.
Chair? Yeah. Calling a second time for vice chair nominations. Calling a third time for nominations for vice chair? Okay, seeing none. Tara, you are claimed vice chair. With appreciation, thank you very much. And then we will move on now to the approval of the agenda. We all got the second email with the revised agenda, adding the consultation with respect to the accessibility customer service. Okay, does anybody have any concerns with the agenda? No? Can we get a motion to approve? Elizabeth, second. Morgan, all in favor? Okay,
When we put a motion forward to make that recommendation, it's an acknowledgement to board around chair and vice chair, just so we have, I believe we need a motion or a seconder to move it forward. Or is it because they're claimed for it?
No, we don't have any motions.
We're a claim.
Or if
That's right.
they're claimed, then it just the information just to pass over the more goes.
Thank you, sorry.
okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to the approval for the minutes from November 9th. So December, it was sent around discussion notes of what was discussed around the table, but because it wasn't a meeting, there's no official minutes for December. So we're looking to approve the minutes for the November 9th, 2023 SEAC meeting. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? Does anybody have any questions or concerns with respect to the minutes?
Just a typo, April was spelled incorrectly on the under item 9, actually on the next page, basically, April 10th. That's about it. I don't think I see anything else, it's just a minor typo.
Okay. With that revision, can we get a motion to approve? Tara, any seconders? Donna, all in favor? Okay, minutes are passed. Okay, then we can move on to the staff reports, beginning with the administration report. Connor?
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. We are happy to be able to bring out the 5th volume of our impact update coming from our Inclusive Student Services Department, where this particular focus is around student mental health and well-being. And it definitely does show some of the alignments within the district between policy and program memorandum 169. And as per the format that we've been following, we wanted to make sure that we are hearing voices from the community as well, from our system and our DDSB system on the impact of what that looks like within our system. And next month, we are also happy to be able to highlight that we're going to be bringing the education community program partnerships, our ECPP programs, will be as a highlight, and always as appreciation through all of our organizations as well. When you do have a chance to be able to spread that out to your organizations, we always appreciate you sharing that far and wide, because we're proud of the impact that we do have. As noted in the agenda as well, we have, as is customary at this particular time, to start our process for our special education program planning process. And just of note around that particular point, our special education classes will be in person next year for the 24-25 year, as we are closing out our program classes at the DDSB and home campuses. And we also want to flag there are no major changes at this point to the model, to that are of note. And then looking as well on the agenda, you'll see that we do have, we want to highlight for awareness the new language found on our on the DDSB website around the most inclusive placements that we do have, which is regular class with a direct support. And the new language really highlights this option and the reason for it, and reason for it truly being the most inclusive placement that we do offer. And just also to note that that language is linked within the agenda as well. Thank you.
Do we have any questions with respect to the administration report? Okay, then we are going to move on to the board report. If there's no questions or concerns around the administration report.
we've had the governance and the standing, and so governance, there was a question around the accessibility policy, the accessibility communication policy, and the consultation process, so that's why you see it back tonight. As far as board is concerned, we did have an update on the, basically around the literacy instruction, as well as the board actually passed a motion to identify Ignite Durham Learning Foundation, which is a foundation, charitable foundation, that fully supports students in the DDSB as a charity of choice. They do some phenomenal stuff across the board, and if you ever, go to the Ignite Durham Learning Foundation, you can see, but for those people who sat around the table, it started off with Make-A-Wish program up in Oshawa schools to basically address some around food security and poverty issues within our schools. And it's grown from there. 2 years ago, it became a foundation. So we do have a depot in Oshawa that provides a variety of food, clothing, etc. But really suggest people go to the website and see just what kind of supports, and they do tours in the of the depot as well. So anyways, and then the Ignite Learning multi-year strategic plan, the final draft was presented to standing committee. It will be going to board. And I'm not going to go into great detail as far as that's concerned, but it will be going to board, and it's out for consultation through, it's posted for people to see, and I know that SEAC was involved in the multi-year strategic plan as part of the consultation process. And then we also talked about sort of the student census. This is the result of the student census. Which again is available there, and I'm sure there'll be some comments here maybe made around the student census around, okay. And then there was also, we talked about the school year planning, county planning as far as that was concerned, because there was questions around ensuring that maybe PA days we accommodate some of other basically celebration holidays from other faiths other than the Catholic faith. And really it came down to is that we have very limited number of days to distribute as far as that's concerned. But I mean, it will be looked at. I don't think we'll be looking at the eclipse of the moon to change PA days like some other boards, but that's another story. But anyways, but it is just so you people do know that a thoughtful process was put into place in consideration of when PA days are being placed. And that's really what's happened at standing. And I think you talked to the new chair and all that stuff before, so that's sort of my report.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns or anything to add with respect to the board report? Can we get the link to the circulated to SEAC so we can just go online and check it out?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, all right. If we have no questions or concerns with respect to the board report, then we'll move on to the presentation of the DDSB literacy plan with the literacy team. Who joined us.
Thank you so much for having us this evening. I'm Bozo, Gishtakwe, Koski, Gwakdogam, and Shnabikwe, Mashadashwe. My name is Erin Elkers, Superintendent of Education for the schools in the north, or Pickering, sorry, not Pickering anymore, for Brooklyn, and I also support teaching and learning, specifically literacy K-12. So I'm really pleased to be here tonight with the team. I'm really delighted to present you with an overview of the significant advancements in literacy instruction within the Dartmouth School Board over the past 5 years. And I understand that members who have been here for a while and had a previous presentation that really introduced the beginning of the literacy pilot, and we hope to expand on that tonight and really show you where we've gone since that point. I'm very privileged to collaborate with an outstanding team, which is the DDSB Central Literacy Team, of which some of the members are here today. And I've been able to witness the positive outcomes in this role over the past year and a half, pretty much in the space. And they've been working at it much longer than I have, but I've been able to be a part of the shifts in the past year and a half and really witness the outcomes of evidence-based instruction and practices in classrooms and how we're developing the right learners. So tonight we have a few key members with us. We have Daniel List, System Lead, Lisa Virtue, Speech and Language Pathologist, Andrea Spooner, Clinical Supervisor for Psychological Services, and Jason Himsel, who is a 7 to 12 English and Language Facilitator. And Connor is also on our Central Literacy Team, and he'll be supporting the team along the way if they have questions as well on SEAC. So today we're going to share a little bit about the district's endeavors, shed a little light on the student experience for hoping really what happens in classrooms with students when it hits the desk of students, and how that has been really a result of dedicated educators in classrooms really wanting to work together to shift practice. So I think with that, we will begin, and I'll pass it over to the team to get us going. Good evening, everyone. Learning to read is not a privilege, but a fundamental and essential human right. And this is the foundation of the work that we are doing here at the DDSB. As we know, literacy is essential for student success, and it is the cornerstone for individual empowerment, education, and participation in society. We're committed to ensuring that all students learn to read. We're working collectively as a team to build student language skills so that they can comprehend ideas and information, interact socially, inquire into areas of interest, and study and express themselves clearly. Through responsive teacher-student relationships, students are immersed in rich literacy experiences that nurture the enjoyment of reading within their classes.
So learning to read and write is a complex process, and it doesn't occur naturally. Developing brains have to be explicitly rewired to make connections between oral language that we hear and the print that we see, the language that we see in print. And those effective reading circuits form in students in the context of strong learning and teaching practices or strong instructional practices. So you can see on the timeline there, in early 2019, educators and DDSB central staff began to revisit and reinforce the importance of oral language and phonological awareness in partnerships with culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy when teaching students how to read. And the impact of that work led to the initiation of the Literacy Inquiry Project. And that brought together the skills of the speech language pathologist and the literacy coach. And that unique partnership really focused on increasing educator knowledge and know-how through professional development and opportunities for in-class collaboration. And as a result, we saw students increasing their foundational learning skills, foundational reading skills, and increased confidence in their reading as a result.
Yeah, so while we were engaged in this work, the Right to Read Inquiry Report was released, as well as the Ministry's of Education's effective early reading instruction guide, and now we have the updated English and language curricula, and they were all released. And we were proud that the work that was already being undertaken at DDSB was in direct alignment with these guiding documents. And moving forward, into the 2023 year, we continued that evolution of the Literacy Inquiry Pilot Project, and it informed the creation of our collaborative interdepartmental teams, as well as system-wide professional learning. So the teams have lots of people and lots of entry points, including our facilitators, literacy coaches, speech language pathologists, ECE facilitators, K-6 support teachers, and D-streaming coaches, all supporting educators in implementing the new curriculum. with new resources and providing ongoing professional development and learning opportunities that center on evidence-based literacy instruction using anti-oppressive approaches. And these collaborative teams also continue to support our junior and intermediate educators to deliver responsive evidence-based literacy instruction. And the impact of this work is being felt by students. We know, we're seeing it, they're learning to read, they're proud of themselves, and they're developing a greater love for reading.
And the team has this a really great flow, and I interrupted consistently, that's part of my role. So they know, but one of the things I wanted to highlight for folks is we are extremely privileged in the Durham School Board to have created a really rich partnership with speech and language, with psychological services, and ISS and teaching and learning are a team in literacy implementation. And that happens in schools. They're alongside each other, working with educators. And I think that really sets us apart from other districts. When I saw how effective the team was working together, we knew we had to continue that this year and find a way. And so I think as a collective, we're pretty proud of that work. And I think it does set us apart from other people that are doing really great work in lots of places, but this really does set us apart from some other districts that are also engaging work. And it really informs what we do on a completely different level. I know that specifically as somebody who's been rooted in curriculum for a long time and is very passionate about curriculum, I learned a tremendous amount from the folks on the Inclusive Student Services team that sit with us on the Central Literacy team. And I think that we're really, with that knowledge in every classroom, we're shaping practice.
And to Erin's point, we believe that the process of teaching literacy skills is not the responsibility of just one person. So educators, through authentic learning experiences and assessments, are tailoring learning experiences that are responsive and are supporting student success. So the school teams are working in conjunction with central staff to offer personalized programming while they support staff in co-planning and co-teaching. And in doing so, we are enhancing educators' ability to support the success of our students. So we acknowledge the pivotal role of families and community in the role of educating students and supporting literacy initiatives in their lives. So the active involvement of the broader families and the broader community is crucial in shaping and fostering the development of these literacy skills.
So now we're pleased to share a short video showcasing how this work that we're doing is shaping the way our students are learning to read and write. Just want you to think about it and enjoy the positive impact that the work has had on educators, families, and students.
Language instruction involves engaging students' multiple sensory modalities.
The resources have been super helpful, and the activities get students engaged and involved. Looking forward to the team coming in again.
In every subject, students select and use a variety of literacy strategies.
Because if we ever see a word that we're not sure how to pronounce, we can kind of do these kind of steps to see how to pronounce it, and we can learn new words.
Because our mind is like a web of things, we usually learn how to distinguish meaning by hearing a word, not by seeing a word. So basically, from being able to pronounce this, you can connect the word to its meaning easier.
I feel like this team is the missing link in education, bringing educators and supports like speech and language together to achieve the same goal, student success.
First one.
O, it would be open.
Good. So you write a little open on top, just write open, so everybody knows. So is that vowel short or long?
It's long.
Good.
After working with the literacy team, I have grown in my confidence in implementing a consistent phonics routine. I also have a better understanding of progress monitoring.
So as an educator, I've noticed that I now have the vocabulary to help teach my students about breaking down words into syllables. And I've started to notice them applying it in other situations where they need to spell a new word. And their sentences are definitely more complex now, so that allows them to get more complex ideas on the page.
It has been so great to see my daughter excited about reading and actually applying the strategies she's been learning at home. Being an FI student, reading in English is something she struggled with in the past. But we've seen a real improvement this year, and I really think the special reading teachers had a lot to do with that.
The Ontario Language Curriculum is designed to support students in developing the language and literacy knowledge and skills they need to succeed in education and in life, and to encourage students to experience the joy and possibility that literacy learning can ignite.
The ongoing collaborative work taking place across the district. And the foundational reading and writing skills students are developing will definitely help them to become reflective, critical, and independent learners and achieve academic and programming goals. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this evening. Appreciate it.
And we are more than happy to take a couple questions. I know that you have a pretty tight agenda this evening, but we certainly can take a couple questions. Go ahead, Donna.
I mean, it's great to see some of the improvements already around the literacy program, and it's much appreciated and fully, when my daughter went to school, I was lucky enough to have a private teacher psychologist who did phonetics. Basically, it was Jolly Learning at the time, at that point in time, and so when she entered the school system, she was still one of the, she had an intellectual disability, she had a very strong decoding ability and be able to read and understand a little bit even better than some of those students within the classroom that didn't have some challenges. So my concern, my comment is or question is around how do you take some of this information, because at the secondary school level, some of our secondary students definitely would still require, because they're still in their early literacy, maybe have early literacy goals still that they're trying to attain. So I'm wondering, how is this applied in the secondary system, in particular around the teachers to help them and so forth?
So right now, like we're actively in the process of familiarizing teachers with the new curriculum. So we're trying to demonstrate how foundational literacy skills are threaded all the way through the document, not just sitting in one thread. On top of that, we're trying to build through inquiry work that mirrors the work that's happening in elementary spaces, teaching evidence-based literacy routines and practices all the way through. On top of that, for students who have sort of more urgent needs, we are revitalizing programming in the GOE courses and the ELS 201 courses to make sure that we are, again, putting educators in the space who have skills to support students when they need it, and also trying better to align those curriculum documents with what's happening in the teaching spaces. So there are sort of multi-pronged approaches to all work.
So you want to just unpack the GOE
So GOE courses are often learning strategies courses. So for students who are coming in, maybe not yet ready to handle a full academic or course load, these are learning strategies courses where they're building some of the skills that will help them be more successful as they move further into their academic careers.
Do you have any other questions? Sarah and then Rob?
So this is, as part of, I've been here long enough, I saw the alignment for 2019, which is great. It's really awesome to sort of see that there's, that the strategies are working. Just want to clarify. So what was sort of the demographic that this pilot program was set for? Did we consider children who are nonverbal? Did we consider children with learning disabilities? So therefore, other strategies would have to be in place because of the additional needs that were there from a literacy reading standpoint versus children with cognitive disabilities, our line of vision, our deaf, hard of hearing, like they learn differently. And was all of that kind of packed into the pilot, or was there a specific demographic starting and then we're going to expand on that?
Can I start and then I'll read that? So the pilot project was 4 schools from each of the four core areas. And we worked with classroom educators for all students. So as you remember, some of the classroom educators were using those same strategies. They actually knew then how to approach reading with their students with learning disabilities that they didn't know how before they were seeing progress. When it comes to specialized students that are non-speaking, we do all of our SLPs were trained in 2009 in North Gillingham, as well as some of our deaf and hard of hearing educators. So applying those strategies as well. It's like everything else we do is multi-pronged. So trying to get the practice and skills into as many people's hands as possible so that they can support all students. And we know that some students, like if you have students that are deaf and hard of hearing with blind low vision, it's a team, right? Like it's a team approach and having expertise from multiple areas, but ensuring that the right people have the training to deliver evidence-based literacy instruction, not just going to program it and saying, this is what works, we want it to be evidence-based.
So I think just a couple points to add to that. So thank you, Lisa. I think one of the impacts of the model was the integrated team, as Erin said, going into a school for all students. So when coming into grade cohorts, all students working on with those levels. We also, as a district, know that there are certain cohorts of students that we need to dig deeper into and learn more about how we're serving them and how we can serve them better. With the release of the curriculum and the large focus, Strand B, and the emphasis on oral language, one of our large questions was, what about our learners who don't access communications through oral language? Lisa's addressed non-speaking, but for students who are deaf, hard of hearing, that was also a large inquiry for us in terms of what strategies in terms of engagement, joy, and skills growth. And so we are quite close to finalizing a partnership with 5 researchers in Western Canada who look at education. At least one member of that team identifies as a member of deaf community with 20 years teaching experience prior to going into post-secondary environment. They want to learn more about the experience of students who are deaf, hard of hearing, and we want to know more about our students who are deaf, hard of hearing, specific to right to read, literacy. There's an element with the Canadian Hearing Society around a fatigue study. And so we're trying to bring all of those pieces together so that we can inform strategies back to the integrated team, so that classroom educators and classroom support staff have the tools and resources to meet the needs of all of the kids in their classroom. Following our tiered model as well. So I'm quite proud of the model in the district and us identifying where we have learning to do, but being in that together. And as Erin said, the power of the model of integrated disciplines has been quite impactful for classroom educators in meeting the needs of kids. And we hear it from the kids, which is really incredible.
Can I just add one more thing? I think it's important. With our non-speaking students, we partnered with Campbell's Children's School last year as well to partner with them in an increased stance and look at how we're supporting our students that use augmentative communication devices and developing their literacy skills. And they rave about the progress that their students have made and have continued on, and now actually have a 0.5 literacy teacher in Campbell's Children's School that's in Gillingham trained to provide evidence-based literacy strategies. So we are learning from other people, not just collaboration within DDSB, but I love that you brought that up because it's outside too.
And thank you. Oh, Rowan and then Elizabeth.
So first of all, I'm sure great work. Whenever you see children that aren't getting that support to the point where you're seeing them, they're vocalizing, this is great, and the teacher's saying it's great as well, it's is always a step forward. That's sort of the representative for learning disabilities. I was speaking to my chapter, and this information, I mean, you've done so much in a short period in terms of explanation, but I'm sure the time doesn't really do what you've done justice. Is there anywhere where we can find the information in more detail? Some of my colleagues would love to get in and just sort of understand some of the literary strategies that you're using. I was happy to hear that, the Fort Gillingham trained people are, so that our evidence-based is there. We'd be excited to hear what other strategies you're using and just sort of see it from, I'm feeling it's pretty close, but I would love to see more of that. Is that available?
Probably, to be honest, we have this presentation that will be shared, we have videos that will be shared, but really where the majority of that information comes from is learning about structured literacy, because we are using evidence-based strategies from research. So we rely on that. We've also looked at the Learning Disabilities Association website that has resources on structured literacy. They're quite fantastic. And so we use those as well to help our educators. And so any research that's out there on structured literacy can really help to guide people who are interested in learning more and developing some of those strategies. We don't necessarily we have resources, structured literacy launchpad for educators. It's just not a broadly shared resource at this point.
If we had any questions, we can do that?
Email the team, absolutely. Through Andrea, myself, and we'll engage the team.
That'd be great. Thanks so much.
Wonderful, thank you. Linda? Yeah, I echo what everyone said, that this is all such great work, and I appreciate how much effort has gone into it and how important this has all been. It kind of makes me think about what are the next steps, and these are some like budgetary questions, I think, too, that you probably don't have answers to necessarily, but like what about will the literacy team continue next year? Providing all teachers with instruction on a new curriculum, and maybe purchasing some resources, those kinds of like future planning. We're pretty excited about the future, to be honest. It's really, we meet every Thursday, and it's a really exciting time for us right now. We are just determining what as we know, the ministry has said we need a system screener, universal screener. So we have determined what our universal screener will be. We're working through pilots to have that launched in the fall. It will be significant for all educators. Yes, it's focused on K-2, but we're looking at incorporating K-8, which is really exciting because we recognize that while we're starting this the last few years, there are still students in grade 4, grade 5, grade 6 that haven't had the foundational experiences with structural literacy and have gaps in literacy that we have to fill. And so we're excited because that screening tool is one assessment tool that folks can use to determine where kids are to be able to plan the next steps more appropriately. But that's one exciting thing. We are building a continuum of learning opportunities. So we still really need to make sure that teacher librarians are trained. That's a big part of the curriculum. That certs are trained, that SSP teachers are trained. So the training is going to extend for quite some time. It is a long-term investment for us. We also are looking at, we have been investigating, Connor through his leadership, has been investigating Lexia as a intervention resource for educators who have a strong foundation in structured literacy and evidence-based instruction. They've been investigating that for quite some time, and that's coming to fruition in the next month. When we do ISST or after-school tutoring, all of those folks will now be trained in structured literacy, evidence-based instruction, and using that. So there is so much happening, and definitely the training will continue for years to come because implementation of the new curriculum is going to take that long. I do believe we'll see an investment continue in the ministry as well in terms of they've launched the curriculum and now we have to support it. What that investment looks like, we have yet to see, but I have faith that the literacy team is so important. I really like to see it continue.
And the integrated way of which, and to be honest, we created this out of a need, and it isn't based on funding from the ministry, right? So these are folks that have positions in the board, but we've prioritized their roles to support literacy because we recognize
the need. And so that isn't necessarily as funding based. It's just a priority of us as a district. Lots of exciting things to come out. Each Thursday just gets more and more exciting.
Tara,
Just sort of talking about next steps in expanding the learning. Has there been consideration for maybe providing parents with a Coles Notes version of said thing? So, because I know all my kid will come home and learning new math, good Lord, I have no idea what we're doing. Because I didn't learn the technique, so I'm trying to help my child do his homework. And I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm trying to give him information that when I was a kid, which is 2 decades ago, and I am probably screwing him up because things are different now. The way that we're taught now is different. I'd be really happy if somebody could give me some Coles Notes on how we're teaching the kids now, so that when the homework comes home, I don't start giving them contrary information and we get frustrated and then the homework doesn't get done and that just spills over. So just wondering if that is
We are
potentially in the cards.
absolutely supporting classroom educators with communication. I think when we see first term report cards, and now there's 1 mark, and that looks different, and the explanation in terms of comments looks different, there's gonna be questions and explanation that's gonna need to happen. But as educators are engaging in evidence-based instruction, we're communicating what that looks like. And so now if we're sending home texts that look different, we're explaining why we're now using typical text rather than text that we've seen previously. As well, when students engage our pilots around Acadians, families will be informed. This is what your classroom is engaging in, this is what your child is engaging in and why. And then we can provide links to a variety of resources. The same with Lexia. So as the students are engaging in intervention tools, the teacher is learning, the class is learning, we'll be sending out information to families so that they're aware of what is happening in the classroom and how they can continue that learning. But yes, and also a repository of resources for parents, I think, is really important. We often guide folks towards the ministry resources as well for parents, but as a team, we're having lots of conversations about how we can continue to deepen that. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much. I appreciate all of your time. Thank you. Thank you. Switching places again.
So we're gonna move on to item 10, which is consultation with respect to the accessibility / customer service. Call please.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Lisa Coppins, Senior Manager, People and Culture, and I'm here with Heather Mundy, Superintendent of People and Culture. I met many of you in October when I attended SEAC. I was virtually attending the meeting, and you may recall that I was there to present and seek some feedback on a procedure that was developed on accessibility. And during that discussion, talked about an audit that we had been through with the Ministry for Seniors and Accessibility and some of the recommendations that came from the audit. And so we had produced the procedure with the goal of having that fall under our human rights policy. Since then, we also brought that forward to a governance meeting in December. And there were some questions at that meeting with respect to the consultation that took place with SEAC. And so we thought it was a good idea to bring things forward or bring it back today for some more discussion and answer any questions, so.
And so what, one of the key questions that came up at SEAC was around at governance was around clarification around the idea around the rescinding of the policy and regulation. So we've shared that with you. It went out. So understand first of all that for most of the regulations, we are in the process of rescinding those because they the policy is the why and the what, and then the procedure really tells us the how, and our regulations are kind of bit both. So one of the things that is a process we've been working through. In our review, so the staff review along with the review with our union partners and the accessibility working group, talked about it and looked at the human rights policy and felt that the language in the human rights policy upheld the content or the idea, the why, that is part of the accessible customer service policy. So our recommendation is that we would rescind the policy and regulation, put in place the new procedure, and have that fall under the human rights policy. When we did meet with our contact at the ministry, their language talks about bringing it forward as a policy. They talk about accessibility policy sample, but they do describe the law is flexible, so you can develop your accessibility policies in a way that works best for your organization. There's no right or wrong way. And then this form goes through what it should look like, but the form is all mainly the how, and that's the content of our procedure. So we do feel that we're in compliance. So happy to take any thoughts, feedback. I think we are going to return to governance again for another chance for them to revisit it, but we wanted to see if there was any concerns with that clarification that where the recommendation was to rescind the policy and regulation.
Do we have any questions with respect to this, what they're talking about? Donna, go ahead.
And I think that one of the problems is I was not able to talk appropriately at the meeting. I had a little voice, but one of the comments I kind of have is that I understand that we're trying to get really rid of the regulations and so forth. Then the policy, the procedure, understanding that it, as far as it will fall under human rights and so forth, to me, when I was looking at that was an issue. My issue is more around the eliminating a policy altogether, and it really is around the AODA, specifically around considering the last, the legislative review was just completed, and the report was put out on December 14th, very quietly. And it really concerns me because under AODA it says you should have a policy for the standards. There's the 5 standards, there's 6 standards, and you should have a policy. And I have no problem in that policy saying, okay, refer to the human rights procedure under section, whatever. That's not a problem. My issue is that when this legislative review says that Ontario is in the crisis, that there's nowhere we're going to meet having Ontario accessible by 2025. And when they talk about, as far as some of the focuses, they had several areas of focus in there. And when they talked about the execution and review and the comprehensive approach and so forth, some of the things that they talked about is that, some of the statistics they gave too was just, this is more than 75% of the surveyed Ontario residents basically reported a negative experience. And there's no, and it also mentions that there is no monitoring or really regulation of an AODA process. Like they don't have any review process. They don't have really inspectors that come in and do audits or anything like that. And so that was another issue. So and the other thing is that when I'm looking, and most people talking, if I'm looking from a transparency point of view, I'm not looking under human rights. I'm looking under accessibility or, whatever. So from my perspective, I honestly think that there still should be, the policy that we had there was a 2-liner, which wasn't great to begin with. And so my expectation is that we have the policy, it refers to the procedure. The procedure is good. Like I went through it, I think it's covered, but and I understand you can't write regulations, but I think that for clarity, for people's accessibility, they're gonna look for accessibility, they're going to look, as well as to ensure the importance of basically OAUA, because most, if you read that report, it's just, it's really sad. They basically, it's one of the recommendations they said that there's no data or research that is basically collected around some of this stuff. And the thing is, and there's poor outcomes, the enforcement doesn't exist, and it says basic leadership does not exist. So, I mean, these are the recommendations that they've got in this report, so I really have a problem. I'm more likely seeing rewriting the policy, and yes, refer to the procedure, the human rights procedure, where it falls under the accessibility procedure. But I'm having a real problem eliminating the policy altogether for transparency and because of this report under AODA. That's my just thoughts and my feelings. I'm very passionate about it, as you know.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments they want to make with respect to this? Tara?
I think I would just, as a parent, if I'm gonna go talk about accessibility, the first thing I'm gonna look on the website is accessibility. I'm not going to think human rights, like to me, human rights translates to discrimination, and those are basic things, not necessarily accessibility. But if you think about it, yes, I understand why. Yes, because it is access to is the human right, but it's not the first place that I would go to look for it, and I might get myself lost and confused. And I know we've had a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion from parents that the DDSB website, especially around things for special education and higher needs students, is very difficult to navigate in there and find the information you're looking for. And it feels like we're burying it. We're not getting rid of it because, again, back to the procedure is there. But because we're sort of hiding it under another word, that's not the word that I would have gone looking for. So it might be a little bit harder to find. And that's all I was sort of thinking is that it's there.
And to clarify that, a couple things. One, it would be a standalone procedure under the accessibility link on the website. So we would make sure that it's highlighted on the accessibility link, not hidden under the human rights. It'll be in both places.
Okay.
Secondly, if you search under our procedures, if you search accessibility, the procedure would come up and the top of the procedure says adopted under the human rights, anti-discrimination, anti-racism policy. So all of the accessibility, and we include in the procedure the objectives, et cetera, so that it's clear. But I do hear you, and I think that's the pieces around, is it enough that we have the procedure, as you see, available for, and it should come up as an easy search. So I don't think the concern of finding it would be a problem, but is that enough, or do you think that the policy over top of it, that we need to have the policy around the assessment? That's sort of the question we were coming back with, right? And we know Dawn is very passionate to maintain the policy, and just wondering the thoughts from the other members around the table. Is the human rights policy enough of an umbrella policy to include the procedure? Or is it something that this committee feels passionate about as well? As what we're looking to get some feedback. So, I mean, and if you want to think about it and email it in to Lisa as well, that we're happy to get it that way as well. If you need time to sort of think through the comments that have made, we're happy to take it.
Connor's just gonna try and put the accessibility page up.
Oh, okay.
Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
I think it's a great idea to put it under the human rights piece, because that is the legal piece of it. Policy within a board is one thing, but the legality of it being a human right is a completely different one. And if a parent wanted to or needed to go beyond the school board, then that would be what you would be going under. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate it for the intersectionality piece as well. So we're not looking at accessibility in a silo, that we're only looking at accessibility, because for many of our learners, it's gonna be intersectionality of all kinds of different things as part of their identity that might be impacting the services they are not getting under accessibility. So I appreciate that is being very clear and explicit, that those policies are under the umbrella of, and there's understanding that it's under the
about human rights.
So appreciate that.
Anybody, just another comment, as I said, I'm not necessarily saying keep that policy, I'm saying that I think that policy overall, and not only accessibility, but an AODI policy needs to be basically identified, because that policy sucks to begin with, that's my personal, it's a two-line policy, it sucks horribly. And so I think that, and again, I really like the fact that it is gone into the procedure, and it does say that, because then you're trying to integrate, which we've been trying to do, is that accessibility right into every living, breathing thing as far as around human rights, around everything. So I like that fact, it's just that umbrella policy around accessibility that I think that one needs to be written, and then it refers to saying, if you need this, this, or this is where the procedure goes. And I find that would be a little bit clearer also, because, and I think that one thing I was saying is that I understand what the seniors of accessibility and their recommendations, but they're not the public. And I look at this review and saying, oh my goodness, there's a real issue here. And it has been a real issue. And I also look at the K-12 recommendations, and there's a lot of issues around as far as accessibility. And a comment I want to make later on is I just attended a town council and GRT meeting around accessibility, even though there's, it's well known that what should be done in accessibility, it's just not happening, and that's what's saying in the report. So I think we can't lose that focus, that it's still there and that we're going eventually, yes, but I just don't feel we're at that stage yet. Anyways, so that's just my comments, and I could provide you with some of the examples that I saw, that then, as far as that I saw from other boards, and even as a sample that AODA put out, that I think that would be a better, encompassing policy to say, and then go, here are the procedures, right?
Anybody else have any comments or questions to add? If nobody else has anything, I just want to add to it. I understand what you guys are trying to do. You're trying to take, instead of having pieces here, there, and everywhere, you're trying to bring it into one spot, and I completely understand that. However, from a perspective of parents, one of the things we found, when it came back with our SEAC survey and stuff, right, is access to information, being able to find things that they're looking for, like that was it does. And it's something that, as a member of SEAC, I've heard for a number of years now, parents struggling to find the information that they need. They don't know where to look or where to go for. So I think it's very important that if they go on, because they're thinking, what's a policy on accessibility for, whether it's a physical disability or just in general, right, for deaf and hard of hearing or low vision, they may just think of accessibility. So we need to make sure that disconnect doesn't happen, right, where they're not thinking of it because there definitely is an intersectionality between accessibility and human rights. They're connected. They have, they go together, but we need to make sure that if somebody's thinking of accessibility, that they can find it easily, even if it does refer them over to the policy with one quick link. Because again, they shouldn't have to click several times to find it, right? Because we know the more clicks, the more people give up, right? But if they're thinking, if somebody's feeling like they've been discriminated against because of a disability, then they may think human rights. And so we need to make sure that regardless of what a parent is searching, they're gonna find the information they need easily and quickly. That's my biggest concern with it. And just for people watching online or, for the gallery here, AODA is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And there's a review every so often of that legislation, just so that, we use a lot of acronyms sometimes, and that is also a bit of an accessibility barrier.
So can I just clarify then, what do you see as making it easy access? So this is what I'm trying to understand, because I understand wanting them to realize that accessibility is connected to human rights, because there is a legal option there, as was mentioned. So, you know, if there's multiple accessibility policy, accessibility, and I'm not owning to this either way, like I'm okay with whatever direction is chosen down the road with the board of trustees. But I'm just wondering, and I wasn't quite sure whether you were saying if we get to the procedure and it directs us to the human rights policy, that makes sense, or whether you meant we need the accessibility policy, that, because the accessibility procedure is gonna lie under one policy.
Right.
So I wasn't which way you were leaning, sorry.
I know from my perspective, I think if I search accessibility policy, I want it to come up. Regardless of what it comes up under, I want it to come up. If I search human rights policy, I want that to come up regardless. So even if it's the same policy that's coming up, the search engine should recognize both.
So you're more interested in keyword search.
Like people need to be, but it needs to be clear. So like, you know, even if you do have a one-liner policy, please see section whatever of the human rights policy. It's clear to parents, right? I just don't want parents second guessing, because like sitting around this table after a few years, you start to have a lot more information than your average parent, right? So you know what to look for, but I'm thinking of that new parent coming into the system that I once was and not knowing really where to start, right? So we have to make sure that we don't create accessibility issues by trying to streamline things for parents trying to find the information on the website, because we kind of, it's kind of easy to forget that, right? Like a new parent is just like, whatever comes into their head at that moment, I'm gonna try and find this. And I remember Googling acronyms just to figure out what the heck these were, right?
Especially in education.
Yeah, no, 100%, educate, as you speak is a real thing, and I mean, it's in every area of work, like people's work, law offices are just as bad for that kind of thing, but we sort of forget that the people that are coming in with generally no knowledge of how the system works, where to go, what to find. They're dealing with maybe just getting their head around an identification that their child has just received. And they're trying to find out as much information as they can. So we have to be careful not to put any barriers there. So I would lead to redundancy over somebody struggling to find, is my personal opinion, right? So as a, you know, just because it's a link on a webpage type thing, like I would rather it be a little bit, you know, duplicative, but parents not struggle. So however that is achieved, I think it's just very important that when parents look for accessibility, they find accessibility. If they look for human rights, they find human rights, and helping them realize there's a link together, right? Because I think over time they have to link it together. But I do think it belongs under the human rights policies, because we do know that accessibility is a human right, right? So it belongs there for sure. It's just how we find it.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything to add to that? No? Okay, I hope that helps.
No, it did. We really appreciate the feedback, and thank you very much.
Yeah.
Nice to see everyone again.
Thank you.
It's been a while.
Take care. Yeah. All right, I'm going to move on next, sorry, I'm lost my agenda, I have my papers. To the open discussion period with respect to parent caregiver engagement events, which was our.
With the mega, we wanted
to put on, that's right, sorry. So we had talked about, and this is actually part of the business arriving pricing from November events, was we talked about, we still have a lot of our committee who's not available here tonight, but we talked about putting on a caregiver as a SEAC committee, a parent caregiver and student really, information night on, in and around, effective advocacy. We had been working on that gung ho right before the pandemic hit. We were, meeting, we sort of had the, starting to plot things out. And then, of course, COVID hit and that all went to the wayside because we couldn't meet and we couldn't do any of that. And we've talked about bringing that forward again, right? And we need a committee in order to do that, to put that on, because we really need to be able to sit down and sort of work out a plan if we want to go ahead and really pick a date. I think we'd initially talked about April, but I'm not sure if that would be a little too ambitious, all things considered. I think maybe we could look at the early part of the school year.
We break it in, and then, sorry, early in that, so that we're emphasizing, I'm just thinking the feedback from the parent caregiver survey around authentic collaboration with schools on the development of IEP goals and strategies. And so if placed early enough where it could be impactful within that
Within the
development
first 30
time.
days.
The only thing we would need to address separately is to keep in mind the 10th SEAC meeting from October. We were gonna place within the same day, so if you're separating time out, we just need to move back to that as business arising from the minutes at some point. But I think the emphasis of the conversation would be on the event, and then the other would be us as a committee goes.
I think we could look at sort of June, or we could look at September. It really depends on what the committee thinks. I know September, there's a lot of it's busy, right, back to school stuff with curriculum nights and different things happening. So
sorry, just from, and again, we have 2 school leaders in the room, as well as what we'll often describe in terms of school communities is that June wears 2 shirts. Because June is wearing the end of one school year and is actually, for a lot of reasons, for kids in transition planning and strategies, wearing the first shirt of the next school year. Whereas when we get to September wears 1 shirt. September is September. So in terms of the volume of activities in schools and the commitments of families, outside of more traditional celebrations of leavings and transitions, we have a bit of I think we have a bit more room actually at the beginning of the school year than we do at the tail end, because again, June is kind of, we've got a foot in both school years, and so do the students and families. We have school leaders in the room too who are.
And I agree with you, the only thing is that sometimes when we have those promotion meetings, sometimes the parent has that view, I'm looking from their point of view, where where you would be like, okay, here I am, I'm setting myself up for next year, and then over that summer, that would be my only, the bonus of the June. But I agree with you, it is a very busy time of the year, but I think the benefit, I guess the question would be, when the community that we're serving would be the parents, and that time they're thinking for.
Correct. Also our early learners. If we do June, we've got 1 cohort exiting, but we don't have a cohort that is coming yet. Whereas the year 1 and 2, building routines with families new to school around authentic partnerships. We'll go either way, we will SEAC, but lots of considerations both ways. And if you don't, Tracy has the secondary perspective as well.
I would agree with you with June for secondaries for sure. That month, I don't even like to think about it just yet because it is so chaotic and so much, especially with graduation and I know celebrations like prom and things like that, which are extracurricular, but they're also big events that occur during that time. And I would agree that I would prefer to start of the year rather than the end of the year. That's just my opinion.
Okay, what about around Tara?
What about May?
I was sort of half thinking that too, is whether
ugly.
May, the reality of it is, yeah, you like, I see all points. The reality of it is, I think you wanna do it when the weather is decent, because you're gonna get people out, right? Like right now, I tend to hibernate myself, like I don't have to go out that cold, I don't. But May is kind of a nice weather time as well, like people are kind of more, you know, if we think we can arrange that.
I think parents are more invested in September, like they're excited about the new school year, they're kind of, you know, they've gotten their child ready, they've gotten them off to school, so now it's like, okay, so what am I gonna do? How am I gonna make sure this is a great year for my child? You know, what do I need to keep in mind? So as busy as September is, I think it is, from a parent point of view, they're more willing to come out in September, even than in May, but May would be my second choice, but I feel like in September, they're kind of, they've got the new backpack, they've got the new crayons, and, you know, they're gonna come to meet the teacher night, they're gonna come to those things at the beginning of the year.
Who is all for September?
Let's just do it.
Let's do it in September. Let's do it in September, okay, so, which is good actually, because it gives us a long leeway for planning, right? Which I think is really important and getting admin input on that as well, but like, you know, we sort of had a plan for it. It'd be nice to put together a committee where we could sit and talk about it. Whether that's meeting virtually, if that works for everybody, or if it's meeting at a local coffee shop and having a coffee and chatting about it and sort of putting together a plan. But we definitely, you know, need a committee, and we'll have to send out a request to the other members, but if anybody has the capacity to be on the committee for this, please let me know. Like, you can let me know now, you can send me an email, but we need to put together a committee, I think, and to come up with an outline that will help us sort of plan moving forward. And, you know, previously we talked about having sort of a main sort of presentation type thing, and then breaking off into like a student workshop almost, and a parent workshop, and talking about effective communication and effective advocacy, and giving parents some resources and stuff with respect to that. So that's okay.
Unfortunately, because I was elected to attend this, the consultation that everybody, but I attended through Durham Workforce, I attended a workshop, and it was a really, really good workshop, in that we were given avatars and basically profiles of who we were, and they had tables set up from different agencies and government departments, if you wish, or government agencies as well. And we had to go, there was no labels on the tables. We had to go and get the services for our avatar. And so we had to find out, one, what they actually did provide, but they also gave us questions. At the end of the process, and I mean, I was fairly good, like knowledgeable as far as services and stuff, and I had a real time. And it basically, you know, trying to find out, one, what the service they provided, and asking the appropriate questions at that time. Because I get to another service and I went, oh, I should have asked that service about this. So it was really interesting. But the other thing is that what it came across is that communication is really key. And a lot of people don't know. But one of the interesting part of it, I made the comment, was there was no parent association organizations there. And I said, you know, many of the parents, they will go to parent associations once they know about them, because there's other parents, and the parent will tell you, oh, you should go see such and such, or you should go here. And so actually, that's what I missed, was the consultation around parent advocacy and all that stuff, and I missed it, unfortunately, because, you know, just as an example, and this is a story for the Durham Dancing Association, when Victoria was born, there was actually a pamphlet in the hospital at that time. They provided me with a pamphlet, and it had a number on there, and I called that number while I was in the hospital. And which is unusual, because I actually had the person from the Durham Dancing Association came to the hospital while I was there, she goes, this is highly unusual. Are you sure you want me to come? And I said, yes. And you know, that person was absolutely amazing because all I got was negative comments. So what I'm saying, when we come to the advocacy, we really have to look at, and looking at even the thing is that your associations are really critical, also part of this process. Because you have the parents on that group and the knowledge of the group and where you can go. So that's just a comment.
Yeah. Perfect. Anybody have anything else to add? Anybody want to volunteer for a committee right now? You had done it. Somebody takes the budget on. We've got all summer. Well, we got Donna and myself so far. I'm gonna work on the rest of you.
One question, did we say before, and I'm forgetting, like, how much of a time commitment the committee was we're expecting it to be?
I don't think it's gonna, like, I think initially we're gonna, probably, I don't know how many here have worked on, program stuff when their kids are at school, but I'm kind of thinking it's the same type of thing, right? Like, we're gonna have a meeting, we'll put together a structure, and then we have to look at like, okay, what are we exactly gonna do? And once we have the content, sort of each person can take on a section of the content, for example, and sort of pull it all together. So I think we're gonna have the odd meeting, like, between now and then, but I don't think it's gonna be something that has to be like a big, multi-hour commitment, but, if we can meet, maybe for an hour or two, to sort of put together a framework of what we want, and then, and pick an exact date, right, which we'll have to organize with board as well. And then, maybe decide, okay, when do we want to meet again to discuss exact content and maybe who could take on what role? And then, sort of closer to the time of making sure we have it all put together in a nice little package before the actual event, right?
Who's the audience, just any and all parents?
Parents, like, I mean, in particular, parents with kids who have special education identifications. But I don't think that it would be exclusionary to anybody, for sure, because I think advocacy is a big thing regardless, right? And also for students, right? Because I know with my kids, I work very hard with trying to sort of give them the steps of how you advocate for yourself, right? Especially with an IEP, right? And how you start off asking for what you need, and if somebody says no, you respectfully say, well, it's in my IEP, and have a copy kind of thing, and then what do you do if they still say no? What's your next step, right? That's not confrontational or big kind of blow up, and working with them through those steps, right? Which moving into university was really, highly beneficial to them. So I think that's the kind of thing I'd like to see us give students some information on, so that they know how to approach a teacher and what to do if it doesn't go their way, right? How to handle that. Because it makes a difference, right? And the same kind of thing for parents, like, where's your first steps, and where do you go, and how do you express yourself, and, that kind of thing. I think Learning Disabilities Association has a program that I actually took. There's actually two types. There's one is a certification, like an actual certificate thing, and another one's more just like informational for parents. But that was phenomenal. Like, I took that program, the certificate one, and loved it. Some of it reinforced what I was doing already, and some of it gave me even more information. So I think that kind of thing for parents, I think, is really quite good, because we know that, it's emotional for parents, right? And sometimes it's trying to make sure you're prepared so you can keep your emotions under control when you're trying to move things forward. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. Yeah, okay. So if you guys think you can commit like a little bit of time, pop me an email and put it together, because I think it would be a great event, especially coming from SEAC, because we have all these, represent all these different associations that do support families already, right? So, it can make a difference, and it also helps raise awareness of our
committee itself and the associations that sit on it and allows parents to sort of feel safer to reach out to us, I think. Okay, and then moving on again to the next item on the agenda, which is the business arising from the minutes. I set out at everybody's station a revised draft of the letter with respect to the promotion of trade for completion of high school diploma that we started writing, and in particular, Charmaine, Rowan, I want to email it because you're not here to Jen and to Sensor Nav. Sensor Nav challenged me to write the section on writing the commenting on the intersectionality between ethnicity and learning disabilities and the impacts on that. That is the sort of the second half of the last paragraph on page 1. And while you're reading that, because I want to make sure, like, I wrote it, but if there's things that need to be changed about it, I'd love to hear back from you, because it's more, you know, I want to make sure I hit it right. And I also know that I missed writing, or we want to ensure that these students are not disproportionately directed out of the school system. I had left out not, and I noticed that when reading it after I typed it 20 times. Oh, is there? Okay, yeah. On where? Page 2. We were particularly concerned about the following point. Oh, yes. Thank you. So if you guys could, read that, send it back, like, check it out, send it back to me. I'd like to get that out before next meeting, because we've been sitting out a while, but I thought it was important to get proper input in that. And before we move forward, I actually just want to let everybody know there's going to be an email sent out to all of us with respect to consultation on the 24-25 school year consultation, the calendar consultation. Sorry? It's Connor's box, if you want to. Sorry? Connor's. Oh, you can bring it over. Oh, okay, perfect. We wanted to get feedback from SEAC on that. On the school calendar.
It's hot off the presses, but if there's any questions, I would say,
okay,
just in terms of the edX structure through here.
Oh, okay. But this is still coming out by email, right?
To everyone individually.
Okay.
So there's opportunity to provide feedback from the associations.
Does anybody have any questions with respect to this, or do you just want to take a look at your emails and provide feedback if you have any? Yeah, okay.
I just have 2 quick comments.
Yeah.
So I think Donna spoke to some elements of practice. The Education Act does require 194 instructional days, and there are dates that bind that in terms of when the calendar can start and when the calendar must be finished by. We do work in consultation with Durham Catholic District School Board as the Transportation Consortium oversees both districts. And where there is not alignment between the 2 districts, it is of significant financial expense within the district. So we do try to align so that the efficiencies of transportation can be maintained while we honor professional learning dates. We have a variety of work years that then wrap around for the specifics of this table. Once the 194 instructional days or school year days for the regular calendar are set, that then ripples our work year for teams such as psychological services and social work, who have a work year of 200 days, 3 on either side of the 194. And we have team members that do work that as well, and it helps us with student planning. So it is, please take a look at it both in terms of your personal family lens as well as your association lens, and the feedback from SEAC is really important to those that are doing the operational planning, as well as the report that then goes forward to board. The draft calendars go before trustees for approval to submission to the ministry. with that requirement in terms of that date, and then they are at the ministry for approval before they're moved into place. So for those new to the table since last consultation, that's the flow. If you have any questions about why something's being placed somewhere as draft, please reach out to us. It's really important that we have that conversation and that the calendars that are brought forward are inclusive of a number of layers, but there are sometimes recommendations brought forward around school year calendars that we are not able to meet because of the legislation that binds to certain dates and framework. I didn't know if there's anything else they want to.
Well, there's also legal obligations when it comes to ministry mandated professional development for staffing that has to take place by a certain time as well. So that's when some of the professional activity days are scheduled, because in order to meet those requirements around health and safety in particular is one of them. So, I mean, all those things are taken into consideration, as well as just to know that I know that the school calendar also goes to all the school community councils for feedback as well. So we take the consultation very seriously as far as that's concerned. But as Andrea says, we are very limited, even with the number of professional activity days to what we can actually allocate when it comes to that stuff. And so it is there, as my earlier tongue-in-cheek comment around one of the boards and their counterpart changing the April professional activity day because of the eclipse, that is total eclipses, and they decided to change it due to safety reasons. And I don't understand that when our kids in the morning, early morning, or in the dark anyways when they go to school too. So I'm not sure what the story is there, but anyways, but yes, everything is, all the feedback is provided and carefully considered by the group before it comes to the board for approval.
You will see 4 calendars attached to the consultation, again, for those that may be looking at it for the first time. So there are 4, 2 for elementary and 2 for secondary. It is the regular calendar start as well as the modified calendar start. So we do currently have 2 elementary schools that come on board following the civic holiday at the beginning of August, and 3 secondary schools that commence 1 week early. So that's why you see 4 separate calendars, because it's the tracking of the dates for those 4 systems operational currently in the district. Feedback's asked for before February 2nd so that we're able to hit the timelines for bringing consultation both to the board or to the board of trustees, as well as giving time for that then to be processed in terms of recommendation and submission to the ministry. So check your emails, please, over the next few days. Your voice is very valued in the feedback.
Okay, does anybody have any questions with respect to that? Okay. Then moving on to our association reports and committee reports. Does anybody have any association reports? No? Okay, committee reports. I'm gonna actually just take this time to just put a couple of things out there. I think I'd like to see, we have a lot of new group people and we have new associations sitting on the board that we haven't had in the past. So I think it would be nice if over the next few months, maybe during the committee reports, going around the table, each maybe association each month, just taking an opportunity to say what their association is, who they represent, kind of like the key factors, and what they think the key concerns or struggles that maybe the children that they represent face, sort of that they hear most from parents related to your association. Because I think it's important for us all to understand, sitting at the table, because I am a firm believer that we sit for our associations, but we sit for all children, right? And regardless of identification, right? We advocate for them all. And I think it's really important for us to understand each other's association and the sort of the barriers that those students may face within the school system. I think that would
benefit everybody, I think. I don't know what you guys think it's. Right, go ahead.
I just want to echo what you're saying. I remember it was either last year or the year before, Hannah, with Easter Seals was on the board, and she was talking about where the accessibility buttons were located. And it kind of opened my eyes to, a group, where we're all together, and I never really looked at it before. I saw one at a set of stairs, because I would imagine the mandate was for the school to put an accessibility button, but it was the stairs, and then it was the door, and the button was at the bottom, and it was ludicrous. And you start to see, your partner's burdens become your burdens in that sense. And I think it's a really good idea to sort of expose, so we can all see it through.
That's right. Every day I go into my office, the same thing, it's driven me nuts for probably like close to 10 years. Our pass card, you gotta tap it on this side, and if you wanted the accessibility button, you gotta go on the other side to hit that for the door to open, and it makes me insane. To this day, it makes me insane. And despite me complaining to anybody who listened, I never changed it. But I agree with you, and I think that's the thing, right? We often don't understand or don't necessarily know what barriers each of these students face and the reasons why we sit around this table and find it very important to do so for a different association. So, anybody want to do their association next month? So we can add it to the agenda? Sure. Yep, perfect, awesome, thank you, Charmaine, appreciate that. All right, and I also think next month we'd like to talk a little bit about the role of SEAC, especially with all the new members. The role of SEAC and sort of and the role of alternates and things like that, okay? We have to figure out where we're gonna make up 2 meetings now, because we've had 2 meetings without quorum, and we are mandated under regulation to have 10 meetings a year, and a meeting without quorum is not meeting. So we now have to make 2 up. So we need to figure out, and maybe people can brainstorm, and we can talk a little bit more about that next month. And maybe we put that as an agenda item to discuss when we're making up those 2 meetings, because we do have to. Ron?
What constitutes a meeting? Like, obviously quorum, and then is there a duration?
No, there's not really duration, and what we could consider doing is having a meeting, I don't know, where we have an adjournment of one meeting and a start of another, and use that maybe an hour to plan for our event.
That's
Like,
sort of what I was saying.
yeah, if we did that, that's a possibility. So maybe if we bring this back to the table next month to sort of discuss how to do that, because I think we gotta figure it out, and if we can use it to our advantage for what we wanna do anyway, then.
Budget meeting. Sorry.
Budget meeting, one we want for budget meeting, yes, for sure.
Very selfishly.
But yes, we have to figure that out. Okay, does anybody have anything else they wanna add?
I don't, it doesn't really fit in any of those things, but I had mentioned it as far as, myself and Kelly actually attended a town hall and Durham Region Transit meeting, particularly for AJAX, but this still applied across Durham region, and I thought it was really interesting because when we talk about Durham Region Transit and the lack of consultation with schools, particular Durham student transportation service too, around route changes. And so Durham Region Transit explained sort of their route selection, their route changing process, and it's all based and really mostly on ridership, not potential ridership, but ridership. And then they're just starting to collect some of the data around the on-demand service that they offer. And we asked them, are you collecting those on-demand requests that get denied because they don't have service? And they said they're just starting to do that. And so, in particular, this was around where Ajax High School, where they changed a couple of routes as well as Pickering High School. They actually changed a couple of routes. And so, what students are limited to in some cases, depending on where they are, is they actually have to request an on-demand. And that means students have, and on-demand only gets you from the nearest bus stop from the resident to the bus stop that is, the bus that is running. And it might not get there in time to get the bus that is running. So there was that, but there was also the whole thing around accessibility. It was a huge concern. We had a variety of people there. Nowhere near enough though, because I think it wasn't, well, it was sort of a last minute thing and it wasn't, but it's not unusual across it. And it came to around, providing services, particularly for students who are trying to do co-op and then students who need some supports and services as well in order to go to either co-op or go to some other program and so forth. So it was quite an interesting thing, but I think that I don't know what this committee thinks about, but it really is an issue across as far as Durham Region Transit and the coordination of services, but also just being able to support particularly, our secondary students who might are looking at getting jobs or participate in co-op and so forth, because we have had where also with the on-demand, as I said, the way the route goes is that today when I call on demand, and this is where I might be brought to this bus stop because that's the service that's running. Tomorrow when I call, depending on the time, I might be brought to that bus stop. And can you imagine a person who basically requires structure, how they are going to, so they can't do it. And so what happens is that before they used to have an accessibility bus who basically took you almost door to door. And so those individuals that actually had work placements could no longer do it because they now required somebody to travel with them because they could not handle if something changed in the structure, right? So it's just something that, is near and dear to my heart because we talk about, ensuring that especially our students are basically included in the community. And this is just another barrier that has been added over the years. And so it's just something to think about that when we talk about, especially on the secondary side, and how do we support our students getting places and participating. And then we've got the whole, the special places at home and then trades and stuff, like how do we get our students also involved in that because they can't get there because the service isn't there, So just a thought, and I just thought I'd bring it to your attention that that's basically what happened.
Can I just ask that? Because I just wrote a scathing email to DRT about that exact same issue. Because there's routes changed in my neighborhood as well, and no signage about the change of that route. And my son started his second semester at York and went to the bus stop that he would normally go to. He's legally blind. And no bus came. He thought he missed it. He kept waiting, and he waited there for over an hour before a very kind woman who may have recognized him from being there before and said, "This bus stop is no longer in service. You have to go across the street now to the other bus stop." He would never, where there's of course a little Durham sign, no shelter, etc. So if it wasn't for that lady, he would have been out there for quite a long time before realizing that there was no bus stop there. So it's not, it is a very, very, thank you for bringing it forward. It's a huge issue for the community at large, not just students, because and the accessibility, because we've applied for that accessibility, he's not qualified for it because where he needs to go within the district isn't meeting the criteria that they have. So the fact that you have the disability doesn't necessarily qualify you for the services that are available. So thank you for bringing that forward because that is a huge issue with students getting from here, just getting to school for some. And that transportation being really the only one that they can use for a variety of different reasons.
And Yeah, and one of the comments too, when you talk about accessibility, because they now, a lot of the buses apparently now have this signage that is supposed to change. It's supposed to change with GPS, but they're saying, oh, well, sometimes it's not quite synced and that eventually, you know, and so if somebody is specifically looking for that sign and then it doesn't change appropriately, they could miss their stop. Or they're supposed to be auditory also, and people can't hear it or it doesn't happen. And so you're sitting there going like, you really, accessibility is a huge issue. And I think there's a real lack of understanding from that perspective. So I think that in itself is a topic, and supporting our students with special needs, as far as, you know, supporting our students, period, for transportation, that's the whole story. But around accessibility, it's a huge issue. They really have a huge problem. Anyways, I thought I'd
Maybe as a committee, that's something that we can put forward a letter. I don't know if it's appropriate, but if it is.
I think somebody could make a motion.
Yeah.
I think somebody should make a motion to put, for the SEAC to write a letter to the Durham Region Transit. Because we could, if somebody put a motion for it, somebody seconded it, we all voted. I think it's a great idea, personally, but, and I have been saying this for years about Durham Region Transit. I feel like they are the restaurant that's struggling, so they start cutting back on quality. And then they lose more customers because the quality isn't the same, and they start cutting back on portion sizes, and then they eventually go out of business. I feel like that's Durham Transit's mentality, right? They don't have forward thinking, and it's been an issue for years, including refusing to coordinate with GoTree. Which makes no sense, right? That's a huge portion of their ridership, and they, you know, the same with removing discounts for the DDSB students, which is why we run school buses to high schools now, right? So there's a whole bunch of issues that they just don't think about. But if somebody wanted to make a motion for a SEAC to write a letter, vote on that. I just want to say that Charmaine mentioned the letter.
Yes.
I'll bring it. I don't know, what am I supposed to say?
I
motion, for SEAC to write a letter, so, of concern around current DRT bus route. Accessibility in their bus routes.
Okay,
And
any
also-
seconders? Donna? All in favor? Who wants to write the letter? Who wants to take a stab at the letter?
We can do it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good, perfect. All right, excellent, see, there we go. Okay, moving on to item number 14, which is correspondence, with respect Hastings, Prince Edward, District School Board on the special instant portion of the government. You know, it's the same sort of concerns we've had for a number of years with respect to the underfunding of the special instant portion. And for anybody new to the table, that is the portion of money that the ministry provides a school board for a student who requires more than two. I thought it was more than one, so I think more than two or more, like direct assistance, right? Like one. So, it is a fraction of the true cost that they pay, and we've written many letters. We have to do it annually. It still remains the same, so clearly that's working well. We sort of get the same response each time, but that's what that letter is about. I can't remember the numbers offhand, but I think we get about 27,000 back or something.
It's 30, what is it, 32 some, or 32?
You don't have information for the current school year yet?
Oh, yeah, I know, but previously it was 32.
It's bounced a little bit.
It bounced a bit somewhere around there, but I know
The
it's
true
27.
cost is more upwards of 60.
No, it is more, over.
6 figures.
Yeah. The two costs, if you're looking at plus, sort of the cost of two, I think I worked it out at one point in time. The last time I did the calculator, it was over close to $110,000. And so including benefits and salaries and benefits, and I think it was $110,000 as far as that was concerned. If you had two educational assistants at the point in time, I think we looked average it out, but that's not necessarily, he's always supporting those individuals. And again, as Eva has said, is that we made this comment several times, and one of the ministry standards response is that we, the special envelopes, like SIP is an envelope, and you were expected, because you also receive a per pupil amount, you were expected to support, your students with the additional per pupil amount. But that nowhere meets us, that doesn't even support our students. The rest of our students that have not as complex care needs as our students that fall under the special institute portion. And so it does put a significant strain. And they also talk about, every time when we talk about budget and increasing budget, they talk about, wow, they quote the amount of money that they've increased over the years, but when you look at the percentage of what is basically salaries, they provide an increase through labor negotiations to salaries that get reflected in the money that's spent. They said, yes, we spend, but we have no choice, there's salaries, and that is what it is. And so I think depending on what you're talking, depending on how you split things, it's anywhere between 84 to percent, somewhere around there, I think, when it comes to salaries. So we have very limited amount of money when it comes to supporting. So it's very frustrating. The other thing is that they also say that it's up to the boards choose to what programs they provide. So the fact that the Durham District School Board and SEAC basically support basically small class placements, which do cost a little bit more to support. They basically said, you choose to do that. And and I don't see that as a choice, I see that as a rights, rights to education, to support our students. And that's my personal view. It's a right, it's not a choice. We must provide to ensure success for all our students. So anyways, it's just a condition of things. Again, it's something that for those of people that don't know, most of you do know, but I started my career on SEAC. I was a parent of 2 students with special needs, and that's how I became an advocate, and then I ran for a trustee. So special education is near my heart, and I read those friggin' grants for student needs and guidelines thoroughly, and bring the attention to what I see as issues for that.
So I have the total here for maximum for 2022-23 year was 28,803. That was the maximum pay per student who required 2 or more full-time staff compared to the actual cost. So that's like, here's $5 to go and buy, dinner for, that's gonna cost 100. Like it's
a quick update. So the ministry for the current school year for 23-24, I think heard both districts and SEACs in the labor intensive nature of special incidents portions applications, as well as documentation and privacy concerns around the files and transfer, things like that. So the ministry did make an announcement that they were going to go to a formula model for the current school year. We do not yet have information about that. But we do know that the ministry is re-engaging. So as Donna mentioned, there are certain envelopes of funding. Our special equipment allocation that we talked about, you would have received our very first impact update in September on that. So the equipment is an audited file, as well as our SIP files can be audited as well. And the ministry had paused that process provincially during COVID. when they announced the boards that would be audited for both special incidents portion and SEAC for the current school year. The Durham District School Board is one of those boards. And what we are optimistic about in when the ministry comes in, because they will physically come in, it's a nice opportunity to highlight the detail and commitment of our team in terms of the documentation of the teams that are involved in those processes. It's quite impeccable. So it's nice to highlight work that may not always be highlighted, such as our clerical support team that drives literally a connection to student experience. But also in the questions that the ministry has provided ahead of time that we will be walking through as a district team, include seeking feedbacks from the districts being audited in terms of what process could be engaged, or ideas and consultation on possibilities around how do we differentiate funding to districts, not we, the ministry, differentiate funding to districts based on students that have those extraordinary needs of the intensive supports of 2 or more board staff with them for the majority of the day, either for safety or health. And so I have hope in the questions that it's an authentic consultation and discussion. We do not yet have our dates in which the ministry will be coming. Our team is actually together tomorrow, I believe, to be planning some of the data and gathering some of that input ahead. But we will certainly bring feedback through senior team, through trustees, and certainly through SEAC as we move through that audit process and what we learn from it. Always open to feedback. Ultimately, anytime there is an audit, there is feedback that strengthens our processes. And so looking forward to that, but mainly looking forward to the dialogue that might have influence and impact in some of these conversations. It is a fairly small number of boards that are named each year of the 72. So we are pre-planning to make use of our time.
I would just add that over the Christmas break, I actually ran into one of the sort of junior ministers, Ministry of Education, former trustee Patrice Barnes, who used to sit around this table, ran into her in Costco. And we had a nice little conversation. And, you know, I sort of put forward some things that have, you know, sort of I've seen as issues for many years, right? Including the funding formula, you know, pointing out how it creates systemic racism, right? Given the schools having to rely so much on fundraising for anything extra outside of your everyday things. And how if you're looking at schools in the lowest income areas, they are predominantly racialized, which means those children are getting very different education than a kid who's growing up in a more affluent area, going to a public school there, whose parents, where the school can raise, you know, upwards, I've heard some schools raising $100 grand in a year, right? Like, and they can't share that between schools, and that's a problem, right? And I feel that needs to be addressed. They need to start going back. So I pointed a few things out like that, including, you know, obviously special education, which Patrice already knows our position on that, because she sat around this table and we've discussed that more than a few times. But I took the opportunity to kind of put some of those things out there again and you know, remind her, as she's got the ear of the minister to say, hey, this is a problem, right? And it needs to be addressed. So just gonna throw that out there. I took my shot. It's an opportunity, took my shot. That's for your chair. Yeah, go ahead. And this is another thing, that it's amazing how things come out, you know, comes out and without any knowledge or fanfare in the media or limited fanfare, it's just sort of things come out. That's just my comment, but this was around Bill 135, and I'm trying to remember, Bill 135 and the Immediate Care at Home Act. And I didn't find out about this until I participated in the Ontario Public School Board Association. We have an advocacy day that we do every year where we meet with MPs and talk about the role of trustees and sort of thing. And and they set up meetings. We set up meetings and with the MPs there, right there. We go to the legislative building. We set up and we and we have discussions about the role of trustees, some of the issues around funding and some of the, you know, general issues that is brought up across the province, but then we can give specifics when we're meeting with our local MPPs. And so I learned about that, there was this bill that was coming, it was in committee and it was coming very soon. And it was Bill 135 and it was at the community carried. And what the heck is that? I had never heard about it. And then, of course, December 4th, it received a royal assent. So it goes through and I'm going, what the heck, this has already gone through. And what the bill basically does is it establishes a service organization that it takes the existing local health integration networks and amalgamates them into this service organization. And the objective of that is this organization to provide, it says to provide, include provision of home and community care services to patients, the provision of placement management services and operational supports, care coordination services and health services all together. And we all know, tongue in cheek, how well Development Services Ontario worked out when they put it into a service. And so my comment is, I don't know if you've heard any further impact on how this is going to do, because it's going to be, the service organization is going to have a board, appointed members that are going to be responsible for this. And so like sitting there going, because you're talking about the coordination and the basically amalgamation of our community care partners into a service organization. And I have huge concerns as a parent who has, when Development Services Ontario happened, and the fact that even though that it's really, you know, centralizing the administration of all this stuff, and they have no idea who my daughter is, you know, no idea what her service, what needs are. And I can honestly tell you, I have not had a call from my development service. My daughter has not had a call from her caseworker in all the years. And I was trying to finally take it apart on her because of glasses. We finally said, like, enough is enough. We're at our age, we're both older and stuff, and so forth. And then we're sitting there going, we can't afford to whatever we're going to try to take advantage of, because that's what it is, of sort of the funds around providing them services and glasses. And it just so happened, I don't know who to call. I have no idea who to call. And I just happened to get in the mail, here's your caseworker. And I went, oh, great. And I phoned, but I didn't have a number. I phoned, and it says that, you know, you can leave, you can hang on, and I'm sitting there, and it was like 20 minutes. I'm going, well, I don't know, wait. So I left a message in the general service, no call. I did it again, no call. And this took 4-month process, but eventually I finally said, like, I want to get the number, the extension number of the individual to call. I finally got a call back as far as the individual phone, left a voicemail, phone, all together, just a form to fill out to get me a whole $112 replacement for her glasses that cost over $400. And I'm sitting there going, and this was supposed to be done by her. Because when I did finally get a hold of the caseworkers, she said, well, I shouldn't be really talking to you. And I said, well, you know, my daughter could probably do this, but she wouldn't be able to handle the amount of crap that I had to do as far as this is concerned. And so on those forms, the letters I got, it actually says Donna Edwards and Victoria Edwards. I said, so you have my name on file that I am her support person. And, but anyways, it was quite the ordeal, but those are just some of the things that I can say when it comes to coordinating these services. And so I have huge concerns, because we do coordinate, and I know staff do belong on integrated networks with some of our services, but community care services and the amalgamating, and this happened, this received a royal assent, and it's going to happen, and nobody has a clue. So if anybody has any information, it would be really nice to share around the table.
Good. Haven't heard anything? Okay. Well, if we do hear anything, I will pick the brain of my friend that you know down the street. Let's see if she has heard anything. Okay. Moving on then now to any community concerns. Anybody have any? There you go. Refer back to Donna. Okay, then moving on to celebrations and successes. Tara?
I do not have an Adam story, I have a me story.
Okay.
Some of you may know through my Facebook feed is I volunteered this year, my first year volunteering for the CADS program through CADS Ontario, which is the adaptive ski program. I'm volunteering at Brimacombe. Highly recommend the ski hill, just FYI, I'm only plugging that. My friend Sarah's been running the CADS program out of Brimacombe for many years, and so I finally went and became a volunteer there. Adam is not a winter sport kid. Does not appreciate the cold. So this was the first time that I have done a volunteer for special needs, but not as Adam's mom. And I have to say, like Rowan, you had sort of said earlier that having the different, being able to have the different lenses, like talk about the different lenses around the room, but we had a volunteer orientation day, and honest to God, it was probably the best day I've ever had in my entire life, because we learned about low vision, vision impaired skiing, and all of the different types of abilities. We learned about all the adaptive equipment that they have available and that sort of stuff. And just the instructors that are there that are part of the CADS program are so knowledgeable, and you could just bring all of those lenses and for me, it just expanded my world in, because I know Adam, I know where his challenges and his needs are. So I'm like, okay, I can modify a bunch of stuff to accommodate him. I have no idea when it comes to, running with the sit ski or, and all the other adaptive equipment we've got. And it was the funnest day I've ever had. And then this past week, I got kids, and it was even more fun. It was so awesome. They've actually got I'll share it out if anybody wants to see it, but CADS Ontario actually put out an advert. They're actually creating a whole presentation around volunteerism with the CADS program, because Brimacombe has a really, really, really healthy program, because they actually have a lot of volunteers and that stuff, but there's a lot of other ski hills across Ontario that have very poor uptake. It's all run by volunteers. So the number of skiers that can be accommodated is fully dependent on the number of volunteers that are there and the ski hill's ability to support them with that. Brimacombe has gone so far, and again, for Brimacombe, they've gone so far that they have trained all of their ski school instructors on the sit skis. So when schools can come into Brimacombe, they actually have people who are fully certified to run the sit skis. So if they have children with needs that can run through a sit ski, they are fully able to participate in ski field trips for school. So I'm like, I cannot say enough about this program, how amazing it is. And it's just, my kids are so adorable, and I love them to death. There's this one small little guy who's not mine, and I want to steal him. He's got Down syndrome. He's got a helmet that's got like two little eyeballs with like alien like eyeballs on it, and he's like bombing down the hill faster than me. I'm like, holy moly! It was like the best day, like super huge smile on my face, and just watching. Like we've got kids who are littles who are 9 years old, all the way up to people who are in their 50s, and so it's an amazing program. And different abilities in terms of fully supported to, you're just watching them go down the hill, you're just trying to chase them and stuff. So so that was me, yay.
Awesome, that's fantastic.
And I'm just saying that, as many of you know, that I love Special Olympics. Of course, the Special Olympics Spring Games are in May in Waterloo, and I myself and I have 4 of my team that are going to be attending for the sport of arithmetic and gymnastics. Actually, 2, myself and my other coach, who's the head coach of the team of our area, which is really, really great. And but also my daughter has now been booked for her annual Down syndrome, what it means to have Down syndrome speeches, and two plus as well, she was requested to speak at the Durham Down Cinema Association as a little speak as far as that's concerned, so, she's quite happy to do that, she always changes her speeches every year. And, as far as, you know, she does her research and she changes her speeches a little bit, as far as that's concerned, so it's really good, she maybe I can make this into a business, Mom.
That's awesome.
She doesn't get paid for her speeches, but she, you know.
I don't blame her for wanting to try. Right?
Yeah.
Anybody else? No? Okay, our next SEAC meeting is February 15th, right here in this room. Motion to adjourn. Tara, seconder? Rowan, all in favor? All right. Thank you all.